Welcome to Deadly Dames, and Claire and I had been discussing an idea for a video, and it kind of sparked to life after we'd recently watched a couple of really good movies that caused us to debate, and we love it when we debate movies. Anyway, that debate spiraled into us discussing fantasy films, because we really love fantasy films just as much as we love horror films, and we discovered that our idea of our top 5 fantasy films are actually vastly different. So we decided to do a 2-part video. The first one would be Clare's top 5 fantasy films and why she loves them. And then the second part is going to be my top 5 fantasy films and why I love them. So, well, we'll just get started.
Yeah, so my number 5. Now, I love all of these films, so, just because it's number 5 doesn't mean that,
it's not as good as others.
Yeah. But number 5 is Return to Oz. Now, I know it's not really a sword and sorceries fantasy film, but
it's still fantasy though.
It's more of a fantasy adventure. I really love this film. I actually saw this film before I saw the original Wizard of Oz.
And don't get her started on Wizard of Oz. You rip it to shreds.
That's for another video. So anyway, the first time I saw this film, it was my friend and neighbour Zara I think I was like maybe 6 and she was maybe 5 when we were very, very young. And we used to watch this film all the time and, would pretend that we were both like Dorothy and, would be meeting all these characters and, I just really loved this film. I thought it was really, really fun. And
do you know it's really funny? It just like before she talking about, do you know what this movie has done to us? See, when we're in shops and we see something which is green, one of us has to be the first person to touch it and go, Oz! I never get anybody. No one ever turns into, like, none of them ever turn into like a creature from Oz. It's terrible.
But I liked it. It was a wee bit sinister, this film, and you don't really notice it when you're a child. But Dorothy is getting like electric shock treatment basically because she dares to have a bit of a wild imagination. That's what I remember anyway. And she's in this facility. She escapes on a rainy night and just happens to end up back in Oz. But everything's changed and a lot of the residents of Oz have been turned to stone by the evil Queen Mombi, who seems to have a thing for collecting heads. So it's not what you'd expect from a PG child's film.
I know.
But I think that's why I loved it so much when I was young.
The scene where she tries to take the key out of Mombi's head and she opens her head and then opens her eyes and then all of the heads start going Dorothy.
And they all start screaming. And some of it is
the
terrifying.
Wheelers.
Now I was petrified of the Wheelers. I used to have nightmares about the Wheelers, and even seeing it as an adult, they're horrible. They're really, really horrible. They're terrifying.
This is kind of making me wish I'd put this one on my top 5 somewhere.
But TikTok saves the day.
I know.
I love TikTok.
We sometimes, like, when we can't be bothered getting up, go, pick me up. Obviously, we don't pick each other up.
But, it's just in fact. But I love that this film isn't actually about, like, the wizard or anything like that. This is about Dorothy and her going back to the shitstorm that is now
This Dorothy has no favouritism either. She doesn't go, and Scarecrow, I'll miss you most of all.
And see, for the record, I don't get this. There's no line in this film. It is the line.
Yeah,
well, the equivalent.
He's right at the end.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, so he
we
is.
need to watch this movie again. So what's your position 4?
Okay, position 4. In other words, hurry up and move on. Okay, so number 4 is Clash of the Titans. This is another one that I used to watch a lot when I was a kid, and it used to be on TV all the time on a Sunday, usually when it was bucketing of rain outside. And this film just reminds me of being
lazy Sunday days.
A lazy Sunday,
too.
Rainy day, and it was raining too heavy to go outside and play. And it was a really fun film. It's quite a long film, especially for back then. But it was a really fun film, and I loved all the monsters, and I had a bit of a thing for like Greek mythology monsters when I was a kid. I used to always draw like gorgons and cyclopses and all sorts of things, and I really loved it. It was the monsters that did it for me.
There was something magical about stop motion monsters, and I think they'll always be, especially with
Harryhausen.
Not even just Ray Harryhausen. Like, obviously the guy's a legend, but things like King Kong, you know, stop motion for whatever reason, to me, just it's magical.
I think, but see when you're a child and you watch this, and you know the stop motion, just it looks so good because it does look very realistic. I mean, you can tell that the movements are a wee bit stilted, but it's still quite realistic when you saw it back then.
I still love stop motion.
What I love about stop motion now as an adult is that you can appreciate that it must have been a labour of love. How many people would have the patience to stop the film every 2 seconds and just move the model like a millimetre.
I remember how excited we got when we were watching Tales of Halloween and that little stop motion guy turned up. We were just like, stop motion! Because there's just something magical. I mean, you love what'd you call it, the Wallace and Gromit, just because of the stop motion, like not just because of that, but you just love that sort of animation.
But it's definitely a labour of love. I think it must be. What I maybe didn't get about
adventure
it is a proper adventure film, but what I didn't really appreciate about this film when I was a child is that, see, when you think about it, right, so in this film the gods are basically playing a game and they're really interfering with other people's lives. Why can't they just let them get on with their lives instead of...
Have you read Greek mythology?
I know, but
they comes down as a swan all the trouble. And comes down and gets off with women without them really knowing that he's doing it. Yeah. This is like compared to actual some of the Greek mythology stories that's out there.
It was a toss up between this and Jason and Argonauts, because Jason and Argonauts I used to watch all the time as a kid as well. I really loved the scene with is it Talos when they go into the crypt and they touch the treasure, but then that awakens this bronze statue on top, and you know they have this great big battle with it.
In the Sinbad movies, there's just something.
I think what won me over with this one is the scene with Medusa, because it is genuinely terrifying. Like, you can't even look at her without turning to stone. And I love the Medusa battle because, you know, it doesn't matter how strong you are, or
it's more about how clever you are.
Exactly. So I just love this film. Number 3 is Legends. So see, when I saw this film as a child, and as I said about Clash of Titans, I always loved the monsters in films, and you know, a lot of the time I didn't really care about the people as such. I just liked the monsters and how they looked, and I just loved Tim Curry's Lord of Darkness. But
he's menacing.
He is genuinely terrifying. But see, when you see this film as an adult, you do take so much more from it. I mean,
it's actually a very dark story, but as a kid all you see is the monsters. And
I don't remember being this film. I don't remember this film being as heavy and as dark as it is when I was a child. It's seen it as an adult, and
that's because you didn't get a lot of what was going on as a kid. You just watched the fighting and the monsters
and the adventure. But see, when I think about it though, it's not really an adventure. I mean, he's sort of forced into this position where he has to go and rescue this lassie from the Lord of Darkness, but she's corrupted. She's not completely unwilling to go with the Lord of Darkness. She gets corrupted, yeah. But it's an excellent film, and I think it's one of those that no matter how many times you watch it, I think you will notice
something new.
So number 2, now this film was always, you know, it's always got to have a special place in my heart, because the first time I saw this film was on Betamax, and I didn't know anyone who had any VHS players or Betamax players apart from my granny, and she had this on Betamax, and every time I went to her house I watched the Beastmaster and I knew it inside out. I mean, I think she maybe only had about 3 Betamax tapes, and this was the only one that I would watch, and I just loved this film. And what I really like about it is I know it's called the Beastmaster, but he doesn't control the animals. He just has this like bond and connection.
Call it the Tarzan effect.
Well, it sort of is like the Tarzan effect. It's quite some of it's a wee bit dark. There's
what happens to the women in it?
Elements of like child sacrifice, kids getting thrown into the fire, and even though I saw that as a child, I didn't, it didn't scare me or anything like that. But when you think about it, it's just quite
dark.
Sinister.
Yeah, it's a dark subject matter, and I think it's like you've obviously seen this movie way more than me, because I didn't have it on VHS
I've seen
or
this
Betamax.
hundreds of times.
I seen this on TV as a kid, and it's funny because the only part until you put it on for me to watch again that really I remembered was the poor polecat dying. It traumatised me.
It used to really upset me. I remember when I was little, and I always had this thing with films that if something happened in it that I didn't want to happen, I thought, well, maybe the next time I watch it won't happen. So I always hoped that the polecat wouldn't die, and obviously he did always die. But I always hoped that maybe this time when I watched it wouldn't happen. I was very young, but even seeing this as an adult, it still feels as special to me, and I'm always going to love this film. What I feel really bad about is it hasn't had a decent Blu-ray release. Not
over here. I mean, the Umbrella one's an Australian release, and the picture quality is very kind of fuzzy in places.
Some of it is
double
like
vision.
It will look good at some parts, and then the next thing you're seeing like a double image, and it's
a shame because it's a movie that really does deserve to get like the Arrow treatment or Eureka treatment, or somebody that's going to give it like a 2K or 4K release. Just I think it's a movie that does deserve it.
Don't get me wrong, there's parts of this that are a wee bit cheesy, but it's just it's a brilliant story, and it's a really good film, and he's a likeable character, and
it just deserves a lot more love than what it's got.
It certainly does.
And then your number one position?
My number one
was always going to be
Conan the Barbarian.
Yep. She loves Arnie.
What I love about this film and is that it's so different from a lot of films that I'd seen at the time. So when I first saw this film, a lot of the other ones that I'd seen were like Beastmaster, things like that, and they always had a wee bit of lightheartedness to them, but this one wasn't. It's
proper
not
dark from the minute
there's no real humour in this film. It's quite a serious film, and I don't think there are a lot of fantasy films that are like that. Certainly not like sword and sorcery ones. There's a little bit of magic in this, but most of it's Conan the Barbarian. And what I love about this film is one of the few fantasy films, especially for back then, that has a female character who isn't basically a screaming pair of boobs. She's a strong warrior in her own right. And
I didn't expect you to say that.
No, but it's true. She's a strong warrior in her own right, and there's so much going on in this film that I think is just brilliant. There's a lot to this film.
What you said you liked was that Arnie's like a proper warrior, and he doesn't need to speak. And obviously, we found out years later it's because he really couldn't.
His acting wasn't that great.
Obviously, he really couldn't speak that great English at the time, so
his English was good, but his acting wasn't good. That was the issue. But I'll always love this film because the first time I saw it, it was just me and my mum, and we were watching it on TV. We were taping it off the TV, and I watched it loads of times after that. But the thing is, when something was played on TV, they used to cut quite a lot out. So when I saw this film years later on DVD, there was just so much that I hadn't seen before. And
even more when you seen it on Blu-ray. So it was almost like every time a new format came out, you got to see a different version of the movie you loved.
I know, so this will always be my favourite film because it's the first, as far as I'm concerned, serious fantasy film that I ever saw. And it has the best soundtrack for a film that I've ever heard. So for any other Conan fans out there, there's a 30th anniversary 3 CD set. That's been, I don't know how long it's been out for, but it's got the complete soundtrack on it. So if you're a huge fan of Conan, I highly recommend getting this CD. It's just brilliant.
So yeah, that's Clare's top 5 fantasy films. We're going to do a part 2 with my top 5 fantasy films. So if you like this, leave some comments below. We like to talk about movies, and tune in to part 2. Please like and subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching, and take care.